Well, I must admit that when we saw that graphic with one long run and contrasted that with the information that we had that was the softer tyre, the much discussed softer tyre, it looks as though Scott Redding is getting an idea as to whether he can make that tyre work over the course of a feature-length race. That is a very long run to do in an FP2 on what is the softer tyre of the two race options.
And a fast run as well. We saw lots of 37s for Scott, a few 38s. He did roll off on a few laps, which does give the tyre a little bit of time to recover. Obviously, that could be where he had to overtake a slower bike, or he ran off at turn one, a few different things like that. But it is a case of, and you can see here for Toprak, 13 laps on this stint for him, and all of them getting pretty much faster as he goes on, 37s all the way through in those early laps, and then able to maintain the 37s at the end. So for Toprak, 13 laps, it's a long run as well, and you're able to then understand exactly what's happening underneath you. It looks like it could be the X for Toprak as well, trying to get that understanding. For Scott to do that kind of run, though, for a rider that always says you can't make the X tyre last when you're heavier, that's really encouraging.
Looks as though Christophe Ponson, facing the wrong way, may have gone down there at the start of the third sector, and Ponson is now going to try and rejoin the circuit, and unfortunately getting himself a little bit mixed up by the looks of things there, but now rejoins. Just going back to riders going for long runs in this FP2, it does rather mean that we're not getting the shootout that we had in the closing stages of FP1, but it does rather set us up for a pretty close battle over the course of the weekend, because the fact that the lead riders feel confident enough to do long runs in FP2 shows that they were able to get their pace straight down to more or less what they were expecting earlier on.
Yeah, once you've got that bike in the ballpark, you then want to be able to tick the boxes for everything else you have to do. What's key is that in the past, Jonathan Rea, whenever he was really dominant and turning up at every weekend expecting to win possibly both races back in 2017, that was really one of the key things for him. He went out and he did long runs all the time because he knew the bike was going to be good. Whenever Ducati introduced their new bike, that's Nozane that's gone down at the last corner, and that's going to be a big crash for the Japanese rider as well. It's fast through there, fourth gear, and you can see for Nozane there, it looked like he's just had the wind knocked out of him.
And separated from his machine as well, the Japanese champion. And we try and have a look out of our commentary box window to ascertain how he's getting on. The session continuing on for the moment at least. Nozane thankfully beginning to move there, being encouraged to stay where he is by the marshals by the looks of it, but that machine looks an absolute wreck, and oh my goodness me. You see it barrel rolling in towards the gravel track where the rider also lands. High speed, as you said, and no great surprises that the red flag has now been shown in this FP2 did rather suggest that that might happen. It has indeed, as you can see, the red flag's being waved to bring a halt to proceedings in FP2. Well, as you can see, riders are making their way out of their pit box, because we're just over 10 seconds away from pit lane reopening here in Estoril, and the FIM have done some sterling work there on the final turn to do that quite efficiently and quite quickly. And as you can see, we've got an absolute swarm down at the end of pit lane now, because everyone knows that they could do with a little bit of space if they're going to be able to set a single lap at the end of this session.
Yeah, we've got 2.5 minutes left, so time for one flying lap for these riders out there. And you can see Alex Lowe's down at 22, heads out. Toprak Razgatlioglu is our pace setter today. Fastest time in this session at 37.2, fastest time overall at 36.9. It's going to be tough for anyone to get close to that, but the big thing is just to be able to go out there. If you want to try and do one fast lap, it gives you something to think about for heading into the Super Pole session, but it's also worth remembering the Super Pole session is going to be much cooler than this, so how much data is really useful from this lap is going to be probably a little bit debatable for some of these riders. The big thing for them is they're able to do a practice start at the end of the session, get a little bit of information for that. Well, and potentially a little bit of pride if you can manage to rattle Toprak Razgatlioglu off top spot in FP2. The time to beat here this afternoon is a 1 minute 37.284, the fastest time of the day, 1 minute 36.9. Don't necessarily expect that to be challenged given the cooler and therefore more favourable track conditions earlier on today. We are watching Toprak making his way around the circuit. Of course, the riders have got to make sure if they do want to run a lap at the end of this session that they get across the line
before the checkered flag falls, just so that they can then complete the lap that they are on once the time allocation is over and that checkered flag does fly. So we're watching Toprak at the moment, and he is the rider who has set the time to beat. He's also the man who's set the pace this weekend so far, and Razgat Lioglu, who is 4th in the championship standings, remember, and with a significant chunk of points already to make up after the Aragon weekend, where he didn't really shine, particularly in race 2. He'll be very pleased if he can keep that form up throughout this weekend.
Well, what's good for Toprak is he's the fastest man overall in Sector 1, he's the fastest man overall in Sector 2, fastest man overall in Sector 3, and guess what? Fastest man overall in Sector 4 as well.
That is the new modelling pose there from Leon Camia, who watches on with great interest. See if Leon Haslam and Alvaro Bautista can improve in the closing stages. We're seeing Haslam there in a trio of riders, along with Eugene Laverty making his way around the circuit. First sector times are coming in from Laverty and Haslam, who are at the front of the group effectively, with Alex Lowe's there or thereabouts where they are on the circuit as well geographically. Lowe's is in particular up on what he's been able to do in this session so far, and likewise both Laverty and Haslam. So they're at the front of the group, clearly the most keen to set an improved lap time, and we'll see if they can manage it here. The checkered flag has now fallen. You can see the riders, I didn't use the word swarm, didn't I, as they all get tucked up together with one another, just trying to get through their lap. Alex Lowe's looked like he might have got a bit of traffic there in sector 2 and has dropped a good few tenths of a second off where he's been, and one of the Yamahas, by the looks of it, getting held back as well further back in that group. So it's going to be a messy close to FP2, firstly with the crash with Toprak Razgat Lioglu there running off the circuit altogether. The checkered flag has fallen, and I think Leon Haslam is one of the few riders who might have a hope of improving his position in the closing stages here. Haslam currently sitting in 11th place, is in line to move up inside the top 10, has a bit of a moment there, does Haslam, as he comes off the final time and towards the start-finish straight. He's got Eugene Laverty just ahead of him. Laverty is not able to improve on his previous best, and Leon Haslam isn't either. He's lost some ground in the final sector when he was looking good. The likes of Rinaldi, Folger and Scott Redding all looking good on their latest laps. And we're on board now with Scott Redding as he flashes past our commentary position and down towards turn number 1, and Redding does improve on his previous best both in this session and over the course of today, going less than a tenth of a second behind Razgat Lioglu's fastest time in FP2 of a 1:37.284. For Redding it was a 37.334, so the fastest times in free practice too, as Tom Sykes crosses the line to move 7th, are Razgat Lioglu, Redding, Rinaldi, Gerloff and Ray, followed directly by teammate Alex Lowe's and Tom Sykes with that late lap effort there.